Have you ever walked past someone who looked like they had everything, only to discover they were carrying a pain no one could see? What happened on one ordinary afternoon changed two lives forever. And by the end of this story, you might see kindness in a completely different way. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Daddy Say Stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming story that reminds us how powerful compassion can be. Now let's begin. It was a warm Saturday morning, and Daniel Harper had promised his 7-year-old daughter Lily that nothing would interrupt their special day together. Since losing his wife Emma, 3 years earlier, Daniel had learned to treasure every simple moment with his daughter. He wasn't wealthy, he didn't have a prestigious career, and he certainly didn't have a glamorous life. He worked as a city bus driver, often taking extra shifts just to make sure Lily never had to worry about food, school supplies, or a birthday gift. Life wasn't easy, but Daniel had made peace with that. Every smile from Lily reminded him that happiness wasn't measured by the size of a paycheck. That morning they packed homemade sandwiches, sliced apples, and chocolate chip cookies Lily had insisted on baking herself. They headed to Riverside Park, laughing over silly jokes and racing each other down the walking paths. Lily's laughter echoed across the playground as she climbed the tallest slide. "You have to catch me, Daddy," she shouted before rushing down. Daniel pretended to struggle. "Oh no, she's too fast," he laughed. For a few hours the world felt perfect. Children played. Birds sang. Families gathered under large oak trees. No deadlines. No worries. No sadness. Just peace. After lunch, Lily wanted to feed the ducks near the lake. As they walked along the water, Daniel noticed something unusual. A woman sat alone on a bench facing the lake. She wore an elegant navy business suit that clearly cost more than Daniel earned in a month. Designer heels rested beside the bench. Her phone kept vibrating. She ignored every call. Large sunglasses covered most of her face, but they couldn't hide the tears streaming down her cheeks. People walked past her without stopping. Some recognized her. Others whispered. Nobody approached. Daniel slowed his pace. Lily looked up. "Daddy, that lady is crying." Daniel hesitated. Most people would have kept walking. After all, the woman looked successful enough to solve her own problems. But Emma had always taught him something he never forgot. Pain doesn't care how much money someone has. He squeezed Lily's hand. "Let's see if she's okay." As they walked closer, the woman quickly wiped her face and forced a smile. "I'm fine," she said before either of them spoke. Daniel smiled kindly. "I wasn't asking." That surprised her. She laughed softly through her tears. People usually do. Lily stepped forward with the innocence only children possess. "My daddy says people who say they're fine usually need a hug." The woman froze. Nobody had spoken to her like that in years. She looked at Lily. "Your daddy sounds very smart." Daniel chuckled. "I mostly survive because she's smarter than me." For the first time all day, the woman genuinely smiled. "My name is Victoria." Daniel introduced himself and Lily before offering one of their homemade cookies. Victoria stared at the cookie. "When was the last time someone shared food with me without wanting something in return?" Daniel shrugged. "I don't know." She accepted it. Tasted simple. Warm. Homemade. It reminded her of childhood. Without realizing it, fresh tears appeared. Daniel quietly sat beside her while Lily continued feeding ducks a few feet away. Neither spoke for almost 2 minutes. Sometimes silence says more than words. Finally Victoria whispered, "Do you know who I am?" Daniel looked confused. "No." He seemed relieved. "I'm the CEO of Harper Global Technologies." Daniel nodded politely. "I drive bus route 12. She laughed again. "I think your job sounds less stressful." "You'd be surprised." Victoria stared across the lake. "My company is worth billions." Daniel remained silent. "I have 3 houses." Silence. "I've been on magazine covers." Still silence. "I haven't eaten dinner with my family in almost 5 years." That finally caught Daniel's attention. Victoria continued. My husband left last year. My son moved across the country. My daughter stopped answering my calls. My mother passed away while I was attending an international conference. Her voice broke. I missed saying goodbye. Daniel felt his heart sink. Victoria wiped another tear. Today my board of directors congratulated me because our company reached another record profit. She laughed bitterly. Then my assistant reminded me that today is my birthday. Daniel quietly asked, did anyone celebrate with you? She slowly shook her head. No. Lily suddenly ran back carrying a tiny yellow flower. She smiled brightly. Happy birthday. Victoria looked stunned. This is for me. Lily nodded enthusiastically. It's the prettiest flower I found. Victoria accepted it as though it were made of gold. Nobody had given her a birthday gift in years. Not because people forgot, because everyone assumed someone else would. Daniel watched as Victoria carefully held the little flower. In that moment, the billionaire CEO looked less like one of the world's most powerful women and more like a lonely daughter who simply missed being loved. The three of them spent the next hour talking about ordinary things. Favorite ice cream flavors, childhood memories, funny family traditions. Victoria admitted she couldn't remember the last conversation she had that wasn't about business. Daniel never once asked about her money. Not once. When they stood to leave, Victoria smiled. Thank you. Daniel shrugged. We didn't really do anything. You reminded me I'm still human. Before leaving, she handed Daniel a business card. If you ever need anything. Daniel accepted it politely before placing it in his wallet without looking. He never imagined seeing her again. Life continued. Weeks passed. Daniel returned to long shifts driving buses. Lily focused on school. Bills continued arriving. One rainy afternoon, Daniel received devastating news. The apartment building where they lived had suffered severe structural damage after a burst water pipe weakened several support walls. Residents had 36 hours to move out. Daniel couldn't afford another apartment immediately. Hotels were too expensive. His savings barely covered groceries. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel remembered Victoria's business card. He stared at it for several minutes. Pride told him not to call. Responsibility told him to try. Finally he dialed. He expected voicemail. Instead Victoria answered herself. Daniel. She remembered his voice instantly. He explained the situation, apologizing several times for bothering her. Victoria interrupted. Where are you? I'm fine. Daniel. Still at the apartment. I'm sending someone. No, that's really not necessary. It wasn't a suggestion. 45 minutes later, a company vehicle arrived. Instead of an assistant stepping out, Victoria herself emerged carrying umbrellas. She helped pack boxes. She carried furniture. She made Lily laugh. None of the neighbors could believe what they were seeing. The CEO they had watched on television was carrying kitchen chairs through the rain. Daniel kept apologizing. Victoria smiled. You gave me something much bigger than this. That night she arranged temporary housing for Daniel and Lily in one of the company's unused executive guest apartments. Daniel insisted on paying rent. Victoria accepted a modest amount because she knew refusing would hurt his dignity. Over the following months, an unexpected friendship developed. Daniel never treated Victoria differently because of her wealth. Victoria never looked down on Daniel because of his profession. Lily became the bridge connecting two completely different worlds. One afternoon Lily innocently asked, Miss Victoria, why don't your kids visit? Victoria struggled to answer. I work too much. Can you visit them? I've tried. Try again. Children often solve problems adults overcomplicate. That evening Victoria drove 6 hours to visit her daughter. The reunion wasn't perfect. Years of hurt couldn't disappear overnight. But it was a beginning. Weeks later she visited her son. Difficult, awkward, Emotional. But another beginning. Meanwhile, Daniel faced challenges of his own. Budget cuts threatened layoffs at the city's transportation department. His route might disappear. Victoria offered him a high-paying corporate job. Everyone expected him to accept. Instead, Daniel politely declined. "I like driving buses." Victoria looked confused. "Even though it pays much less. Every day I help children get to school, workers get home, and elderly people reach doctor's appointments." He smiled. "I matter where I am." Victoria admired him even more. For the first time in years, she questioned her own definition of success. She began making major changes at her company. Mandatory family leave expanded. Employees received mental health support. Executives were encouraged to spend weekends offline. Flexible schedules became standard. Shareholders complained. Profits dipped briefly. Employee happiness soared. Within 2 years, productivity reached record highs. Victoria often admitted during interviews, "The smartest business advice I ever received came from a bus driver who never gave me business advice." Reporters always looked confused. She simply smiled. One spring afternoon, Victoria invited Daniel and Lily to company headquarters. Thousands of employees gathered in the auditorium. Nobody knew why. Victoria stepped onto the stage. Years earlier, she would have delivered another speech about quarterly earnings. Instead, she held up a small dried yellow flower preserved inside glass. Employees looked puzzled. "This flower changed my life." She told everyone about the lonely birthday in the park. She described the little girl who offered kindness. She described the single father who treated her like an ordinary person rather than an important executive. Many employees quietly wiped away tears. Then Victoria announced a new foundation dedicated to supporting single parents facing unexpected financial hardship. The foundation would provide temporary housing, childcare assistance, career training, and emergency grants. It would be called the Emma Harper Foundation, named after Daniel's late wife, the woman whose belief in kindness had inspired him to stop for a stranger that day in the park. Daniel sat speechless. Lily hugged him tightly. Victoria smiled through tears. "Emma never met me," she said. But because she taught Daniel to care for people, her kindness reached someone she never knew. The audience stood in applause. Months later, the foundation helped thousands of struggling parents across the country. Some found housing. Some found jobs. Some simply found hope. And every success traced back to one small decision. One man choosing not to walk past someone crying. Years later, Daniel and Lily returned to Riverside Park. The ducks still swam peacefully across the lake. Families still laughed beneath the old trees. Victoria joined them carrying sandwiches instead of catering from expensive restaurants. She smiled. "I finally learned weekends belong to family." Lily, now older, laughed. "Took you long enough." They all laughed together. Daniel looked around the park and remembered how close he had come to simply walking by that lonely bench. One different choice. One conversation. One homemade cookie. One little flower. That was all it took to change countless lives. Because kindness rarely announces itself with grand gestures. More often, it begins with something incredibly small. A question, a smile, a few moments of genuine attention. We never truly know what someone else is carrying. The person who seems strongest may be fighting the hardest battle. The one who appears to have everything may be longing for the one thing money cannot buy. A caring heart. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give another person is simply letting them know they don't have to face their pain alone. If this story touched your heart, remember that every act of kindness has the power to create a chain reaction far beyond what we can see. Thank you for spending this time with us on Daddy Say Stories. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes compassion can still change the world. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and never underestimate the difference one kind moment can make.